Welcome to the Thoughtful Leader podcast. My name is Ben Brearley. I'm a leadership coach and the founder of Thoughtful Leader. The Thoughtful Leader podcast is all about short, sharp leadership advice because thoughtful leadership is good leadership. Welcome to episode 315 of the Thoughtful Leader podcast. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the important topic of balancing ambition with potential burnout. It's an important topic, so let's get into this one right now. So I work with a lot of thoughtful leaders in senior leadership roles, and they're trying to do good things. They're trying to lead big groups of people in a good direction. They're trying to make positive change. They're trying to get promoted. They're trying to, make an impact and do all those good things. But sometimes I think the concept of thoughtful leadership is sort of overshadowed by this well-being topic of, you need to take breaks and you need to look after yourself and all those good things. And I do believe in that, but I do think there's a role to play for ambition as well, or trying to achieve good things, be promoted, get more senior, earn more money, whatever it might be for you. I think those things are really important as well, because what I want to see is more thoughtful leaders in the most senior leadership positions around the world in our organizations, rather than some of the leaders that we have out there at the moment who are more of the, more narcissistic and sort of ambitious and will do anything to get there type of people. So I want more thoughtful people up there. So how do we get there though? How do we balance this ambition with burnout? Because you see examples quite often of people who are going down the path of trying to be the most senior and working all day and all night and, having heart attacks or leading to burnouts and lacking motivation, all those things, or actually engaging in unproductive things like drinking a lot or drugs and all this sort of thing to cope with the stress that they're under. So what I'm interested here in this episode is just to give you a few ideas on how you might balance this ambition with avoiding burnout. And I think it's good to have ambition, and several of my clients at the moment are in senior roles where they're juggling difficult deadlines and commitments, and they're having to balance these sort of challenges. So how do we do that? Well, there's a couple of things that I think are important, and I know they've served me well when I'm in stressful situations and have been throughout my career. And the first one I would suggest is to develop some healthy habits. And these will depend on who you are as to what they are exactly. But for me, I have my meditation practice in the morning. So I do 10 minutes of meditation when I get up in the morning. I do that first thing. So I don't do anything else. I don't have breakfast. I don't take the dog for a walk. I don't have a coffee. I don't do anything. I get straight up and do meditation just for 10 minutes. Then I have my breakfast and that sort of thing. So that's one thing that I do almost every day. I'd say 6 times a week at the least. Now, this helps me over time build more mindfulness sort of mindset or ability to be more observant. And I've talked about mindfulness before a couple of episodes ago. That's one healthy habit. The other thing I do a lot is exercise. So I exercise 5 or 6 days a week. So pretty, relatively medium to high intensity exercise, 5 or 6 days a week. And for me, I just developed that habit many years ago. So I'm doing strength training, I'm doing jogging, I'm playing basketball in games, I'm doing exercises as part of my rehab for my knee from years ago, all these sort of things to keep my body strong and my mental state positive as well. So there are 2 things I do. And over the last 5 years or so, I've really started eating better as well. So I've started to, reduce the rubbish food I eat. I wouldn't say I eat perfectly, that's for sure. I am a bit more mindful about what I'm eating and when I'm eating it and all those good things. I also have excellent sleep hygiene, as they call it, which is, I go to bed at a reasonable time. I read before bed. I avoid bright lights before bed. I wear a sleep mask. I wear earplugs. I use a lightweight tape on my mouth so that it forces me to breathe through my nose when I'm sleeping. All these things add up to much better sleep for me and that helps me feel good during the day, obviously. So I've got very good sleep habits. So there's some examples of my healthy habits. But I also, I go for walks and all this sort of stuff as well. So what I think this is about, for you, it might be, you go to yoga or Pilates, or you go for a jog, or you go to the gym, or you just have a coffee with a friend, whatever it might be. The healthy habits you build are going to help you in your most stressful periods. And during your most stressful periods are the times when you need to actually engage more in these healthy habits. Because often what happens, I find, is people get stressed and busy, and they actually drop the healthy habits that are good for them, and they're good for managing stress. So for example, I don't have time, so I won't go to that yoga class. And I think that's a mistake. And I think you build your healthy habits and you stick to them so that you can maintain your energy levels and your motivation during the hardest periods of your working life or your life in general. So the way I do this sometimes, I have lots of training delivery and commitments to do during a given week. And so sometimes I'll get up earlier. I'll do exercise in the morning before I go to work. I will meditate every day before work anyway. Sometimes in the afternoon, if I haven't done any exercise, I'll do it then. So these sort of things are things that I engage in now, and I bring my lunch to work so that I can eat relatively healthy as well. And sometimes I'll go for a walk during my lunch break, those sort of things. And those sort of things help me to manage my stress levels even when I'm busier. So if you build these healthy habits, and for you, it'll look different than what I just listed. But if you build healthy habits, you need to stick with them, especially when times are stressful and times are tough, because that's when you actually need them the most. So that's the first thing I would suggest. You can work hard, but make sure you maintain healthy habits and you don't just drop them all. The second thing I'd suggest is, and this is sort of related in a way, but it's from a professor called Brian Little, and I've talked about him before. He does a lot of research on personality psychology, and he's retired now, I believe. He's from Harvard originally. Now, he talks about the concept of restorative niches, and these are periods throughout the day where you will recharge your energy. So if you're an introvert like me, you might have 10 minutes where you book a little meeting room for yourself, or maybe half an hour, and you are alone and you can check your emails or you can relax. Or maybe you'll go for a walk at lunchtime by yourself, or maybe you'll just sit quietly with a coffee in a coffee shop where no one knows you're there. You'll have these little periods throughout the day that you build in to restore your energy. Now, if you are more extroverted, then you might do the opposite things. You might give yourself opportunities to have a chat with a colleague, be more in a more social, busy environment, those sort of things, and in a high stimulation environment to restore your energy levels. So whatever your sort of personality style is what you should focus on in terms of how you would restore your energy. And so that's a really important thing. How can you build those things into the day? Because often they don't have to take hours to relax. For example, you might take a 5-minute break between meetings where you stand up, go for a walk, get a glass of water, whatever it might be. Those might be the things that you do to give you that little bump of energy rather than back-to-back meetings all day. You give yourself that space, for example. So that's another thing I would think about. Now, another thing I would urge you to think about is longer-term thinking and thinking about sustainability, because often we start to think of our working life as, I've got to get this deadline, I've got to hit this deadline on Friday, it's the most important thing. And so you keep rushing and rushing and rushing, working harder and harder and harder. Now, the problem with that is it's not necessarily sustainable. So you could actually burn out, and then maybe you would be off work for a while. You might be stressed and unmotivated. You might have a bad impact on your family life because you're stressed after you come home from work and you're working late and you're not sleeping well. So I'd encourage you to think for the long term with your career as well. You could work super hard in a short burst, but the challenge with that might be that you could experience burnout. The other alternative would be to go a bit slower, but incorporate all these sustainable good habits and actually being able to sustain that fairly good work effort without burning yourself out for a longer period. So think about, it's a marathon, not a sprint type of saying is useful here. The sustainability is important. So when you're thinking about, oh, but if I'm taking a break here, I'm not doing all that work I should be doing. Well, think about it from a sustainability perspective that the more you look after yourself, the better able you'll be to be able to keep doing that good work in the future as well. And the quality of your work will possibly be higher. So try to take a longer term view of this stuff as well. And the last thing I want to mention here is that I think it's important to be flexible. Now, what I mean by this is sometimes people give, let's say the example of, I've had people say this to me before, I check my work emails on a Sunday because it helps me feel good about Monday before work, like I know what's coming. And so I feel better prepared. Now, some people I know would say, well, that's a terrible idea. You should never check your work emails on a Sunday, work-life balance, blah, blah, blah. However, I think it's important to be flexible and to understand what works for you and to use those techniques appropriately. When you're an adult, you can make the decision. I think if checking your emails on a Sunday helps you to feel better prepared for the Monday so you can get in and be productive and positive, I think it might actually be a positive thing to do. I don't see it as a really negative thing. Yes, you're doing some work on a Sunday, but as long as you limit it to maybe half an hour or whatever it is to get prepared a little bit for the next day, I think the net benefit of that move is probably positive. And so I don't think there's any hard and fast rules here about you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. A lot of people now, well, not a lot of people, let's be honest, just people who talk about this stuff really, but people are now using the term work-life integration rather than work-life balance. Because the reality is, if you're in a senior executive role at a busy company, it's not going to be perfectly balanced. Your family life and your work life might not be perfectly balanced because you're going to have to work a lot. But it's about work-life integration, being able to integrate the two in a positive way that helps you sustain it for the longer term. So I think work-life balance is a little bit of a fallacy now. It's not really about balance. It's about finding what works for you and being flexible in how you achieve those things. So those are my thoughts on this topic. I'd love to hear what you think. You can go to the show notes page, thoughtleader.com/podcast/315 to tell me what you think and how do you balance your ambition or your goals with burnout. What do you do? What are your healthy habits? Let me know. And if you need help with this, I work with a bunch of leaders who are trying to do great things, and you could be one of them. So get in touch. There's a link to my coaching page on the show notes page as well. So please book in a free chat and we can talk about what your needs are and if working with me might be a good thing for you. So thank you for listening to this episode. Keep up the thoughtful leadership as usual, and I'll be back next week.